I hand over to Dr. Andrew McCulloch, the Chair of Social Work England Board, who will introduce today's session.
Thanks, Renee, and I'm very pleased to introduce this session as the Chair of Social Work England. Firstly, as a potential client, as an older person, and secondly, because it's a subject I've always taken an interest in since I did a doctorate in the psychology of ageing in the late 70s, early 80s. And I've noted since then, as we all will have done, a massive increase in the number of older people, which of course is a success for our society. But in particular, the 86%, the number of people over 85, since I studied the subject, obviously creates challenges. What's Social Work England's interest in this subject? Perhaps it's obvious, but as the regulator, our key concern is public protection, and within that, the health and well-being of the public, and the development of public confidence in social work. And social work has a critical role with older people. We have 30,000 social workers with adult services, probably more actually than that. So today it's about a really interesting piece of NIHR funded research which has been taking place in Walsall around using data-informed centred approach to providing social work services to older people. And I'm very pleased that we have three of the experts involved in this with us today. We have Reshma Patel, who's a long-standing person with lived experience, who's engaged in all sorts of ways over her life with services. We have Heather Gillian, who's a social worker heavily involved in the improvement work in the project that we're talking about today. So I've been very quick, I hope, because I want to hear the conversation between our three colleagues. So I'm going to drop out now and hand over to Reshma, Heather and Lorraine to tell us conversation between them about the project. So thanks to you.
Thanks so much, Andrew, for that introduction, and welcome everyone to this conversation between Resh, Heather and myself, where we'll share insights from our project. I'll start asking Resh and Heather questions shortly, but before I do, I thought it may be helpful to start with our why. So a key output from the 12-month partnership between Walsall Council and IMPACT is the theory of change, which was co-produced by the project steering group. You can find the full document at the link that's been shared in the chat, and within it, it includes a co-written project purpose, which is a useful way to frame our conversation. So here it is. So the project purpose: 2/3 of people accessing adult social care in Walsall are aged 65 years old or over. These people matter and are experts in their own lives. They and their families draw on social care as they transition into a different way of living their life, which may require support from others. This project aims to highlight the value of embedding relationship-based approaches in social work to deliver better outcomes for this group of people and carers. It will also promote the importance of the specialism of social work with people aged 65 and over, as the Council and the nation supports a growing ageing population. So that's our why, which picks up a lot on what Andrew mentioned in his introduction. Now I'm going to ask Resh and Heather some questions to explore their perspectives on being involved in the improvement project. Let's start by reflecting on co-producing the change. So I'm going to come to you, Resh, first. And what I'd love to know is, what was your motivation for getting involved in this project? Oh, Resh, you're on mute at the moment.
That was bound to happen, wasn't it?
It was.
Yeah. Sorry. Right. So my motivation for getting involved in the project was that I was actually part of the initial research, which was funded by the National Institute of Health and Research, with Birmingham City University, Bristol University, and 2 other local authorities, where we looked at what good social worker looks like for people over the age of 65. This research found that time invested in relational work, peer support, and effective relationships was highly valued, not only just by social workers, other services, older people, and their family carers. So, really gave a rounded picture. So why was I motivated? Well, I'm passionate about wanting to continue this work, putting the evidence actually into practice, and bringing the reality for all older people over the age of 65. People over the age of 65 can have a named worker that they can build trust with. The social worker can then make sure that their carers, their family carers' needs can also be met, and this way reducing the anxiety felt by so many people when accessing services for the first time of the need of repeating yourself, and social workers having to. This also then gives social workers more autonomy to be proactive rather than reactive when circumstances change, because that's what seems to be happening at the minute. I too am going to get old one day. Well, I am actually old now. Too often, systems are designed for people rather than with us. So this project created a great opportunity to ensure that voices with direct experiences meaningfully shape the outcomes, aligning strongly with social work values, participation, empowerment, and co-production.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Resh. I really appreciate that. I'm going to come to Heather now. So you were also involved in the NIHR funded research that Resh and Andrew mentioned. Why is social work research important?
So for me, social work research plays an important role in developing our social work practice. As from my own experiences, I have found very little research focused specifically on social work with older people, despite the growing complexity of need and the increasing overlap between health and social care. So the research helps us to understand what works and why, and how we can adapt our practice to its continually changing contexts. Being research informed is important, specifically when working with older adults whose needs may require robust partnership working across complicated systems. Evidence-informed practice allows us to learn from what is effective and meaningful, and the core principles of co-production remind us that people are experts in their own lives and must be central to that learning.
That's great. Thank you. Thanks so much, Heather. Okay, I'm coming back to you then, Resh, now. So we've talked a lot about co-production already. What are your reflections on how co-production has influenced this project? Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
It's fine. It's absolutely fine.
So co-production has basically shifted the project from being the service-led to a more community-informed project, bringing together lived experience, professional knowledge, and wider evidence from the research that I mentioned earlier, really brought it together. This also strengthened the theory of change. It also increased trust and relevance, which I believe will strengthen long-term impact and sustainability of the project. I realised how important it was for Lorraine to take her time during the initial meetings to really let the ideas surface from different perspectives, building commitment and understanding to ensure everyone was on the same page. I observed a real culture change in the way that we were working with Walsall Council. Throughout the project, we all shared decision making on priorities, sometimes through voting, and everyone had a voice in a safe space. I genuinely felt actively listened to, not just tokenistically involved. Together, we've created a more balanced, practical and ethically sound framework with achievable targets, more than what any single perspective could have achieved alone. How did we get there? Transparent communication and valuing diverse forms of expertise were really crucial, and we continue to do so as we now move on to the next implementation stage. The Social Work with Older People Co-Production Steering Group continues to meet monthly to monitor and support implementation.
Brilliant, thank you. And yeah, thanks for like the mention there. It was an absolute pleasure really to sort of facilitate the space with all of you and to bear witness to some really ethical and ambitious co-production taking place. Okay, I'm moving back to Heather now. So what was your experience of co-production before this project, and how has this approach informed your practice?
So before joining the project, my experience of co-production, I felt it was there, but it was quite limited. I understood and understand the concept in theory and felt that this helped to underpin my practice, but I hadn't fully appreciated what co-production meant. So being part of this project has helped me to reshape my understanding, and by working alongside people with lived experience, has shown me how much more meaningful co-production can look like in practice. It has certainly encouraged me to be more curious and to recognise the expertise that people and carers bring when they talk about their own lives and experiences. I feel that this experience has changed the way that I practice in terms of becoming more intentional about collaboration and more reflective about the conversations that we have on a daily basis. I also feel that it's strengthened my confidence in advocating for relational, person-centred ways of working. And it has also inspired me to reach out more to the community and to connect with the people that we work with. Being involved in the research project has reinforced for me the importance of all of this and has shown that all of the hard work over the past few years has really been worth it. It's shown me that co-production it's not just a method or a tool, but more of a mindset, one that strengthens our practice, deepens relationships, and ensures that the voices of people who draw on care and support remain at the heart of everything that we do.
Thanks so much for that, Heather. Great. Okay, so we've talked about co-producing the change and getting that clarity, and all of that brought us to the point of having that clear theory of change for us to work towards and to act as a North Star for the project. But I'm interested now to start to shift to thinking about implementing the change. This is a shift in ways of working, and quite a significant shift in ways of working, in fact. So it's interesting to start to get into the nuts and bolts of how do you do that. As we move into that, I'm aware that, you know, we talked about the use of evidence and data broadly in co-producing the change. And I'm aware that Tiana Lassiter, Principal Social Worker and Head of Service for Improvement, Assurance and Reforms, and Tina James, Head of Service for Pathway to Independence, Provider Services and Localities, have both been really keen to use Power BI and other management information to support the operational planning of moving to a named social worker approach. And that's helped with having a clear understanding of waiting list data. And I know that Walsall Adult Social Care is in a really strong position that 100% of annual reviews are completed on target and have been for the last couple of years, and you're on target for that again this year. It's also helped with forecasting and planning of workload, of supporting team managers, again in that professional autonomy space, with helping with the clear prioritization of existing and new needs, and also allocating work proportionately across staff within the teams, drawing on lessons learned from trying to implement this approach previously, but also from other teams that have taken a similar approach more recently as well, to make sure that there's a conscious effort to avoid overload and overwhelm. So lots of data being drawn on, but I'm really keen to understand your involvement and your experience of the implementation. So Heather, I'm going to come back to you first and ask, what were your concerns before moving to a named social worker approach?
I think any changes within practice will naturally bring a level of uncertainty. And for me, within the team, the biggest question was how this approach would work within an already complex and high demand environment. I remember thinking back and worrying about expectations from people with lived experience, their families, and the professionals we work alongside may increase in ways that might become difficult to manage on a weekly basis. And we did also worry that by becoming a consistent point of contact, we might unintentionally raise expectations beyond what we could support as practitioners, and whether, for me personally, would this impact on my degree of consistency in practice. I and the team also questioned whether the wider structures and processes around us would be able to adopt this new way of working. It wasn't just about individual practice, but about whether the systems were ready to cope with the changes. Although these worries were real, we had workshops that were created to support with honest conversations in the team about what we needed to do to help the approach work. So through the conversations we had together as teams and shared experiences, it became clear that while the named social worker approach required more of a cultural shift, it also offered an opportunity to strengthen relationships, to improve continuity, and work in a way that feels more aligned with our personal and professional values. Some colleagues adapted very quickly and embraced the approach, but it is important to recognise that for others it will take time, and that is completely understandable. What matters is that we continue to support one another, monitor the demands of work, and use our resources in a way that feels sustainable and person-centred. In many ways, the concerns that I and others had at the beginning have helped to shape a more thoughtful and grounded implementation. I think it's encouraged us to think not just about what we were doing, but why we are doing it, and how we could embed the approach in a way that supports both the people that we work with and also the well-being of the teams.
That's great. Thanks so much for that, and for a very candid answer that I think talks about both, the challenges as well as, what you've put in place to try and support around that. Resh, I would love to hear more about the support that's been provided to staff to assist in adopting a named social worker approach. I know you've worked with Jerry Nasoska, who, very kindly brought some great expertise from the NIHR funded research and brought that into this project in terms of looking at implementation. So it'd be great to know more about what you developed together and delivered together.
Okay. So, I think Jerry came in on board around June, July, August time, but since September, we put together, Jerry and myself, a range of co-delivered workshops, initially for managers, advanced practitioners, and then the frontline staff that Heather has referred to ensure that everyone moves forward in this way of working together rather than being done to. The aim was to make sure that everyone understood the change, why we were introducing it, the evidence behind it, and to identify any early teething problems so that the transition could be as smooth as possible. During the workshops, we talked about the purpose of the approach, the evidence behind it, and the expected benefits, not only just for staff, but also for the people and their carers in receiving support. The workshops were interactive, giving teams space to think about how culture change would work in practice, consider their own solutions within their own teams, and raise concerns, including those about their well-being. Staff were able to talk openly about things like workloads, supervisions, systems, managing reviews, and responding to unplanned safeguarding work, which helped us to understand where additional support might be needed, as well as providing a space to share any good practice around diary management, computer systems, etc. In addition to the workshops, we offered 2 online drop-in sessions, giving staff another opportunity to share what was working well and what wasn't. I think we had 2 teams that were actually in the initial pilot. So, yeah, we had these workshops in December. Feedback from this was confidential, summarised in an anonymised report to senior leaders, because we wanted to ensure authenticity in when staff spoke to us. As a result, senior leaders are now working on clearer guidance and processes to make sure staff feel supported and to inform the next phase of rollout for this approach. This wider rollout has been paused for now so that senior staff can make sure the right systems are in place. This is reported to the Social Work with Older People Steering Group on a monthly basis. This co-production group of people with lived experience, staff, senior leaders, are accountable for ensuring the outcomes of the initial impact project are met and continue to work collaboratively to support and enhance success of the named worker approach. Overall, this approach is aimed to build staff confidence, reassure teams about culture change, and enable more relational, personal-centred and preventative practice. Just to say, this named worker approach is not just for people over the age of 65. We've decided at Walsall Council that everybody who receives adult social care services will eventually have a named worker.
Wonderful, that's great. Thanks so much for sharing the support on offer and also the intention, I guess, and the ambition of Walsall Council to move towards this way of working for everyone. But of course, it is still work in progress, I think it's fair to say. And you've talked about the fact that, you know, when needed, we've pressed pause to make sure that we're continuing to take that thoughtful approach. So I'm going to come back to Heather and just ask, what are the practice conditions that are enabling this change to a named social worker approach?
So over the past few months, we've spent lots of time exploring what it means to work in a way that is grounded within relational practice and genuine collaboration with people who draw on care and support services. I feel that this has helped to create a shared understanding that continuity and consistency matter, and that people benefit when they have a single point of contact who understands their needs and can provide support alongside them. Another enabling factor has been the work that we've done around co-production as a local authority. So being involved in the research project and working directly with people with lived experience has helped us to see the value of shared decision making and the importance of underpinning this in practice. I think this has helped to influence the culture of the team, making us more open to change and more confident in approaches that centre the person's voice. It has also helped us to recognise that people are experts in their own lives and that a named worker model supports this by strengthening trust and continuity. Another key practice condition has been increasing our focus on staff wellbeing. So that involves arranging some wellbeing walks, and breakfasts have become so important as we transition into the new way of working together. I feel that they have really helped us to reconnect as a team and create moments where we can reflect and share together. These spaces have allowed us to acknowledge the challenges openly, but also to recognise the strengths within the team and the value of supporting one another through changes, and help to highlight how we work with one another. As mentioned, it is still a work in progress, but the foundations are being developed in a very productive way, which I feel will help the named worker approach to work for me, which feels both meaningful and sustainable.
Wonderful.
Thank
Thanks
you.
so much, Heather. Okay, we're starting to come to the end of our talk now. Just a couple of short, I guess, insights or advice from you, Resh and Heather. So what advice would you give to people watching who would like to adopt a similar relational approach to social work in practice? Resh, I'm going to come to you first.
Sorry about that. I've just been
That's
kicked out.
fine.
I've just been kicked out of the room.
Oh no.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
So yeah, so moving to a named worker approach for us is not just about a change in process. It's a real culture change, focusing on continuity, stronger relationships, and more consistent support for people and their carers. Ultimately, I think the main thing that's made this whole idea work is ultimately taking the time to listen and put together the right support in place, is what helps this culture change succeed, to ensure that this approach works well for practitioners and the people receiving the support and carers. So take your time, ensure that you include everyone on the journey, actively listen to everyone, and ensure that staff have the space and time for reflection and peer support, as well as the well-being sessions. Culture change, as you all know, can take time, and it's important that the systems are also put in place to allow staff to provide relational, person-centred and prevented practice, including feedback. So we've actually got some feedback forms out at the minute that we're still in the middle of monitoring.
Wonderful. Thank you
you.
so much. And Renee, if it's okay, I'm just going to come to Heather for the last
Sure.
word.
So my advice would be to start with building rapport in the relationship itself, and supporting those involved to guide the conversations. Relational practice does not mean a huge overhaul overnight, but small and intentional changes, such as listening more deeply and recognising the expertise that people with lived experience and carers bring. It's important to embrace professional curiosity and be open to learning, because relational work may mean working with uncertainty and adapting as you go. I think that advocating for the right conditions is equally important to support with relational practice being possible. When the environment itself supports the change, this way of working becomes not only achievable, but rewarding, as it helps to strengthen outcomes for the people that we support and reconnecting us with the core values of social work. And when we recognise the expertise that people with lived experience and carers bring, the dynamic, I feel, naturally becomes more collaborative and meaningful. And for me, this project has shown me how powerful it is when we genuinely value lived experience as equal to professional knowledge.
Wonderful.
Thank
you. Thanks both so much. It's been great to be
Yes.
in conversation with you, and I'll hand back over to Renee.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, thank you so much to Lorraine, Reshma and Heather for such an interesting and informative session. I know we were limited, it's a bite-sized session, but we have popped the link to the full research in the chat for anyone that wants to get in contact with the team or have any questions. We didn't have time for Q&A as well, but there is a link linking directly to the research if anyone wants to follow up on anything. As I said earlier, the recording of this session will be available very shortly after Social Work Week on our YouTube channel, and we hope that everyone has enjoyed today's session. I surely have. We appreciate if you can complete a brief survey, which we have added to the chat, and we welcome any feedback you have either via the feedback form or by emailing socialworkweek@socialworkengland.org.uk. And if you're a social worker, this session can be used as CPD. You could reflect on what you have learned with a colleague, your manager, or another professional, and this would meet the requirement for a peer reflection. So once again, thank you so much for such an informative session, and I do hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you, everyone. See you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.